you believe in the supernatural? Do paranormal, mystical, and spiritual dimensions really exist? Is our reality influenced by beings on other planes of existence? Join our roundtable, bring your stories, and take your place at the Mystic Circle.
Okay, I think we're good so far. Whew, this has been a trip. So, everyone, welcome to the Mystic Circle podcast. I almost said the Gothic Mystic podcast, but that's not what this is. So, we are just kind of chilling out tonight. We're going to be discussing various topics. I think what we agreed originally on basically discussing I guess what mystic is at first, and kind of letting it just roll at that point. And I did not want that to be there, so let me remove this and remove that. Okay, so where do y'all want to start? There we go. Okay, so in my opinion, a mystic is basically someone who feels like they can become one with the Father, just like Jesus said in the scripture. And sometimes, you know, some mystics, from what I've been able to see, have like a bunch of dreams, a bunch of visions. Others, they deal with where they experience a lot of, oh, I would actually have to unmute yell too. There we go. They experience a lot of spirit travel, different various things like that. What 2 cents from y'all? In y'all's opinion, how was that look to you?
I was vibing off the dictionary definition.
Okay.
Which one of them says belief in direct experience of transcendent reality or God, especially by means of contemplation and asceticism instead of rational thought. And a couple other different definitions that I read all kind of had the same vein of experiential versus maybe mental or theological or philosophical. And I really relate to that, because I think if you don't have the experiential part, why stop at the philosophical or theological when you can also have the experiential? So
I like that. But see, that does make sense at the same time.
I love it. I love the acceptance or explanation of going out of the rational world, because just believing in God in today's world is considered irrational. I mean, most people would say that that's ridiculous. Why would you do that? Why would you waste your time? So, you know, I think there's a lot to that. You know, to us, God seems very irrational sometimes. Why does he do this? Why does he do that? Mm-hmm. But when you explore the spirit and allow yourself to get involved, and you read scriptures and you say stuff like, or read stuff like, you know, this and this should equal this, but God or Jesus was able to take this amount of fish and this amount of bread and turn it into an irrational amount of stuff. So, you know, you have to be willing to accept the irrational, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times with like rational things, that's kind of going along the lines of like depending on our mind rather than going with the flow of the spirit.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it too. Absolutely. I agree.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go in the etymological tip. I gotta dig in some language to see where mystic came from, because you can think it kind of has the word mystery in it.
Yes.
And it's kind of related to like the mists or the shrouds, kind of things are discerned to see. But the earliest I've been able to find is from the Greek, and muin, which is to close the eyes or the lips. So there'd be like a secret, like something you couldn't tell people. And then a mustis would be someone initiated into those mysteries, someone who knows them, but they also know mum's the word. Can't tell everybody where everything comes from, otherwise they'll break it. That eventually went into a French like mystique, which then brought into the idea of a mystical or a mythical kind of attitude. And for my definition, it's someone who is aware that there are non-perceptible factors of reality. That way
Love
it's not confounded by tradition. It's not limited to specific forms, because there's a lot of systems of mysticism and mystic schools per se. But I don't know if you have to be like a card-carrying mystic school member to be called a mystic. Did Rumi go to a school? I don't know. So.
Right.
That's good. I like that.
Someone
I do
did
too.
post in my a group I have that, let me see if I can actually find it real quick. I do know that like it is kind of common, especially in like in the Christian world, that I guess a mystic is either like some kind of redundancy or even considered either heresy or partly heresy. But from my perspective, from what what I believe the Lord has shown me, is that that's just the religious spirit trying to remove us from the ultimate intimacy with Him. Because from what like
Putting limits.
yeah, from like the little research I've done, because I could always do more, and the little understanding that I have, it's like with the Catholic mystics and even like Jesus and the disciples, you can like tell that they were coming from the knowledge I have, and even before, like they were always to have that very deep intimacy versus this religious thing. And from what I've been able to tell from my studies in the book I'm publishing, the religious spirit separates us. And so, but the Father wants that deep intimacy. And from what I've been seeing, whether it's Jesus and the disciples or the Catholic mystics that are well hidden, mind you, and even the prophets of the Old Testament, they all had that really deep connection with the Father. And it really amazes me that we can't really tell or even see it until we actually walk out of a certain mindset, a viewpoint, filter, until we actually see, oh wow, I can see this now because I am now walking in that same path. But at the same time, if you are in the Christian realm and you are, you're dealing with that spirit, you don't see it. You see the same, but it takes a whole different. What is that word I'm looking for? It takes a whole different thing,
Like, is there a mystic awareness?
That's a good one. That's not the word I was looking for, but that's good. Like, it shows a whole different spectrum of things once you're outside that.
Church will tell us that we have a God of limitless power and abundance, but then we'll try to put a lid on what we're allowed to access.
I think in some ways that may have served a purpose in previous times, as there was a lack of comprehension by the general lay people of what that could mean.
Yeah.
Like, there's an omnipotent God, so I can pray for unlimited donuts? Yeah! I mean, wait a minute. Like, you could pray for it, but maybe that's not the prayer you want answered, per se.
Right. Yep.
Definitely
see that.
agree. Scion, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned intimacy, and I think like the concept of mystic union and oneness comes up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we're talking about one of the definitions, one of the many clearly, of mysticism as being experiential, then I think that's at the heart of it, is recognizing, for me at least, recognizing that oneness, that interconnectivity, that the divine is not off somewhere on a magic cloud. The divine is within me, within nature, within the very vibration of quantum particles, within my heart, within my love, within my joy. And that's where the experience comes from, I guess, for me, is not thinking as that dimension of of the divine as being far off, but more like closer than the air that you breathe, kind of thing.
Yep.
Now,
I think that's good.
mhm. I deal with that same thing, Chris. In fact, I think she's in my room.
That one cat in particular never comes to me ever until I do something like this.
That's hilarious. What are some of the practices that y'all have been able to perceive that do or whatever that does or does not, or may not be considered a heresy or against the church, whether it's any form of magic, tarot, anything that you do as a mystic, regardless of what the church thinks? Because I'm wanting people to see, hey, this is normal for a mystic, regardless of what your upbringing is.
Mine's real quick and simple. As far as I'm surprised how many Christians I've talked to are against meditation. They don't believe in it at all. They, open doorways to other things. But if you just did a Google search on meditation and scripture, it comes up time and time again. So
Yes. That was one of the things that really got me too originally, is
Mhm.
that the Bible actually says meditate.
Yeah. And a lot of it, as I think we've all learned, is you got to set the intention. If you go with the intention to meditate on something negative, that may not be the best practice. But if you go in, set the intention to connect with God, with Christ, however it is you go about it, and that produces results, I think. Positive results, I should say.
Yeah.
Or more positive, yeah.
Richie?
I'm kind of chewing on the question. Kind of like, all right, so what's all the stuff that you do that you could get in trouble for?
Yeah.
You're good with the breath work. You could start with that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where to connect it to. It's kind of like mulling in my brain, like, is shamanism a subset of mysticism, or is mysticism a subset of shamanism? But
Yeah.
since the word magic was brought up, I did a deep dive in the Western magic tradition to try to learn about all the different types and names and things, and then had a great foray into chaos magic, and I don't know if I could ever leave, even if I had to. But with that kind of idea, I think that it's presence. If I had to choose what kind of mystic, I'm working on the yogi mystic, doing the cities kind of thing in the bhakti path. But to be connected in my own mind to the fact that there are super perceptible parts of the world, I think is what's important, whether it's meditation or prayer. To me, meditation is receive, prayer is send. You got to send and receive, otherwise kind of sideways. Not necessarily like casting bones or pulling cards or looking at tea leaves. Much respect for divination, but I think it's the walk. First you got to walk it, then you can talk about it.
That makes sense. Sion?
Yeah, I feel like anything can be a trigger point into that realm, that dimension, that mindfulness. Breathing, definitely. I think a paradigm shift of some of my upbringing in Judeo-Christian church culture of you kind of gotta plead with the divine to come near to you, and you gotta be holy enough or whatever different things, and a paradigm shift from that perspective to no, if these ancient texts are true, then it speaks of the divine is close to me, the divine is within me, the divine loves me already now here. So I guess mindfulness and presentness. And then even in the last week I've been experimenting with this concept of suffering and struggle as being a portal or a springboard into that mystical connection, mystical experience. If I can get good at that, then that'll really change all the challenging things in my life.
One thing I've noticed with me is that it's everyone knows by now that that I do the dream interpretation thing, but I've had times in the past where I was waiting for someone to contact me because the Lord said, this person's going to be contacting you, and I don't know if it was just the right time or if I got pissed off enough or what, but I had remembered a dream. It was several years ago by now, but it was only about a year or so at that point of when this happened, and I guess it was just the right time, but I basically spoke out the dream, the basic message of the dream, and then within like 24 hours, that person contacted me. So it's like I've seen where those things can happen, and I don't even know what to make of that. No, I've even had times where he gave me a message in a dream, and I don't know if it was Holy Spirit, the Father, I don't know, but it was spoken to me in the dream that in order for this to be prevented, this has to happen. And so, I got a few people involved because I knew it was a very sensitive subject, so I got specific people involved, whenever I thought or believed the right time was, and we were able to basically change what I was shown. I like to call it changing the future, because if I had I not done anything, that would have been the future. But because I spoke out, all these different things that I knew would change it, told the specific people and had them do what was needed to be done, we were able to literally change the outcome. So I don't know if that would generally be considered Richie, you mentioned it before. It was a specific word. It was a type of magic user way back when. Someone who takes things out of a dream or a vision and basically manifests them. Can't remember what it is.
That's the role of the shaman, isn't it?
Thank you.
Drawing
Yeah,
things out of
shaman.
it.
Yeah.
Fair. I mean, what you were saying sounded like you were responding to the mystic's call. Like you had some kind of information or data input into your mind, into your awareness, into your conscious field. And then something in your heart center realized that even though maybe making those choices didn't seem logically 3D in the physical world like a plan of action, you pursued it anyway.
Yeah.
And then all of the other levels of non-perceptible reality conspired to bring forward that kind of multidimensional experience.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, and I like that because it opens up things that we normally don't even look at. What about y'all? Have y'all had anything, may not even be a dream or vision, like anything that y'all have done that changed circumstances or just did something that you were not expecting?
I had this is a very, very small scaled down version, but it's an example nonetheless. And it's very recent, like it happened today. I've been dealing with this fraudulent debt collection against me from Sprint. I've never used Sprint, but they say I owe them $2,700 and I don't. I've got all this paperwork to fill out. I got things I need to do, contact them, police. I was overwhelmed, didn't know what to do. I just put it up to God. Please navigate me through this, and just left it. Just set it, forget it. I was going through old text messages, deleting, clearing up, and I saw an old text from my cousin, who is a detective and a former on the beat police officer. And immediately I got that, contact her, get a hold of her, get her help. And I did, and she's like, you need to do this, 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 and this, and you should be able to have it taken care of. It went from me having no idea what to do, God, please navigate it, and now answers were coming. Just nice. Boom, boom, boom.
I mean, also in the credit, you listened and then you slowed down. So you responded to the incoming data. It's an awareness factor too.
Yeah.
That's super awesome, man. That's totally horrible, Verizon's being punks, but if it's anything, you can clarify your position with them quite easily.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's an account that was taken in a state I've never been to, using an email I've never recognized, and it's like, you don't want a photo ID or like a social security number. You just take a random email and then somehow I get it. It's just weird. The whole thing's weird.
Huh. That is. But hey, I'm just glad it's moving forward for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Now, I know that with the group that's growing, this community that's growing, we will and do have people who regularly do like tarot cards and other things like that. Do y'all have any experience with that, or like do you like what's your 2 cents on that stuff?
I dabbled with tarot for a long time.
I'm still waiting to hear what Scion does for things that it's technically potentially heresy.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know.
All of it, everything.
Blowing out my spot over here.
I love what you say about God's intimacy and how close he is. I think that's vitally important because a lot of people, they don't think they feel God's presence, or they think it's like this distant thing. You got to figure out how to access it and bring it to you. They don't realize that God's Holy Spirit is loosed on all of us that we want to access it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that element of faith, which is mystical by nature because it makes no logical sense. There's no empirical evidence. There's no reason why you logically should believe that you could tap into the ultimate source of love and peace and joy right there in your bedroom.
Yeah.
But so it definitely takes that that leap of faith. But then, yeah, I don't know. It was a major shift for me. Like, I got tired of like pleading for good things, and then I started like pretending like the good things are already right here, and it turns out they are.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I could go on a whole tangent about imagination and childlike faith and manifestation and how they're all connected.
Yeah, go ahead.
How are they connected?
I mean, they're so connected, and I'll tell you why. I think that, yeah, some of the scriptures from Yeshua talking about the kingdom of heaven or the dimension of the divine belongs to such as these, like the little children. And I think there's something super significant about little kids, their innocence for sure, but just pretending. And in modern culture, imagination is this kind of dirty word that immediately discounts itself, saying, oh, that was just your imagination, which what's implied there is that it was your imagination and so it's invalid. But I believe that the imagination is like can be a canvas upon which spirit can paint, and it takes a little bit of us playing around, and then at a certain point spirit takes the brush and starts going above and beyond the little thing that I was imagining. So yeah, I just think it's beautiful how kids don't stop to think like, should we imagine this, or is it too big or too wild to imagine? They just full power, full faith, charge ahead. And I think, yeah, even whatever it is, I feel like any effort towards wielding that spiritual tool of imagination can be incredibly breathed upon by the divine. I think it's just that act of faith of kind of maybe getting the momentum going a little bit yourself, and then boom, that launches you into a full-on vision or whatever. So.
You said something there about the with like the childlike mind or whatever. I just posted something in Discord where I kind of use a child example of, because a lot of times we don't know how to receive. We may put it out there, but we may not really think we deserve it or accept it. We don't really know how to receive. But a child, if you go to a child and say, I've got all these gifts that I want to give you, do you want them? A child is going to be like, yes, I do. But we, as adults, we start accumulating baggage, and we get to a point where we defeat ourselves. I would love to receive this or this, but I don't deserve it, or I've done this, I've screwed up. We sabotage it.
Yeah.
So could that word also be like a form of karmic debt?
Sure.
Like I know a lot of people who are totally going to do the thing, they're totally going to practice every day, and then they get a ukulele, and then they never practice. And so it's like they kind of entered a form of debt, or they say they really want to have good friends, so they meet a bunch of people and they swear they're going to have good friends, but then they don't reach out and they don't upkeep those friendships, so those friendships don't really develop. Versus somebody who taught themselves to juggle with sock balls and then got real juggling and then got clubs and then all of a sudden got really talented because they were devoted and dedicated to the craft that they were up to.
Mm-hmm.
I think in some ways that could be seen as like walking with your imagination as your friend rather than as your opponent or your enemy. So I remember when I learned, like, wait a minute. So in the holy things, the God voice just talked to people inside the head. I get talks inside my head all the time. Does that mean God's talking to me all the time? About all this stuff? Yeah.
God does work through the imagination.
Yes,
That's
he
true.
does. I remember growing up, my imagination was like super active. Like to the point where I would get yelled at in class because I was in my own world. Now, because the world basically frowns upon the imagination, even though it's kind of how half the people, you know, like the creators and artists and painters all go based on the imagination, and a lot of times we would say no, we don't, the imagination, that's not, God wouldn't use that, but they don't realize that our thoughts go off of that whenever we're having conversation, whether it's in a meeting or in a public place, and we're remembering stuff, even if it's like an image or like remembering what happened 20 years ago, that goes off imagination. And so, like, whenever I was young and I would be in my world continuously getting yelled at, they basically forced me to shut it down. So for like years I shut down my imagination. Now, I've been able to kind of get it back going, but I still have a hard time. I think what's really important though regarding that is that we have to learn to control it but not kill it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because if we kill it, then it's bad, but then if we actually, I think it has to do with just growing in maturity. Because if you're in a job, you can't just let your go into your own world for 4 hours straight at work. But you gotta,
you eventually have to put it to action.
yes, yeah.
We all know the person who's the daydreamer with big aspirations that never does the work, and you have to follow up. You have to put in the work with it, have the vision, and then follow through.
It really makes me wonder if a lot of the magic and like these people of old, and even nowadays, I forget who I was talking to here recently on my podcast. They planted something because they're testing something.
Mm-hmm.
Their plant hadn't grown that they were trying to, and they finally said, "Fine, okay, I'm just gonna sit down and do this." So it hadn't shown at all. So he literally sat down, meditated, kind of did the life and love, and it was either a couple hours later or that next day, it had literally grown to like a small sprout in just a matter of hours, when like a month or however long it was beforehand showed nothing. So it's kind of makes me wonder, okay, what we're seeing, and this is actually a good segue. It really makes me wonder, the stuff that we're seeing now, regardless of what community, what circle these people are in, what if the stuff we're seeing now is just the beginning stuff? We've grown our skills, our whatever, basically whatever, our skills, our gifts, whatever it is, we've grown to a certain point. But what if that's just the beginning? Because you know how with muscles, whenever we're really young, we gotta keep on using our muscles for them to get stronger. What if we just now getting our giftings to a certain point, and it's just now strong enough for us to use it, but it's still very weak compared to where we could be? Thoughts?
I agree. I have a history of depression, anxiety, drug addiction, alcohol. I mean, I've done everything wrong first. And so I think, gosh, what was the question again? I got on a sidekick. Gosh, what did you
beginning? Is it just starting?
Yeah, yes. So for me to see what it's taken me to get from that to this, I still feel like I'm kind of in that building the muscles and doing the work, and I still feel like I'm in the beginning stages of it. From where I was to where I'm going, where I'm at was to where I'm at to where I see myself hopefully going. I feel like I'm in the beginning stages of it, because I've still got some strongholds that I'm trying to work through and overcome that have leached on from years and years of bad habits.
Richie, Scion?
Good sir. Richie's screen is paused for me. For me, absolutely. Yeah, this is just the beginning, folks. I'm here to tell you. I think when you're delving into the infinite, it'll always seem like just the beginning. And I definitely want to see myself as just a beginner, because I think I don't want to get cocky, you know. But
that's a great point. I love that.
I look at like culturally, like we are barely scratching the surface when you look at all of the suppression of spirituality, whether it's resistance to the spirit in church culture, whether it's the massacre of the wise women of the tribes, you know, labeled as witches. There's been all sorts of horrible suppression of people stepping into the fullness of who we are as spiritual beings. And so I think, yeah, definitely, like we're only like this is a lot of this is cutting edge. A lot of this is people are resistant to us having this pleasant conversation. That tells me that we're just barely being able to get into some of this stuff. So I'm excited.
Oh,
I agree.
Did we lose someone?
Yeah,
There we go.
Richie
Yep,
dropped
Richie got dropped accidentally. There we go.
And then my phone almost died in mid-sentence, and I gotta get a charger for it. I was like, oh my god.
Richie, you have any 2 cents?
Gratitude, yes. As long as we're still talking about, are we still beginning? Is this
Yes.
just the start? Fair. In my perception of this dream, thinking that all of the things that we perceive are in our mind, there's a term called a paracosm. I don't know if it's a shared definition, so I'll drop it inside the internal chat so we can see it, and then I'll read it for everybody else who's listening. A paracosm is a detailed imaginary world. Paracosms are thought to generally originate in childhood and have one or numerous creators. The creator of a paracosm has a complex and deeply felt relationship with this subjective universe, which may incorporate real-world or imaginary characters and conventions. I'm postulating that our name is not our name, in the sense it's just a sound that somebody told us we will respond to. So when we were given our name by our parents, we built a narrative and we built a paracosm, an imaginary world that says that I am this name, I am this person. And then we learned about the culture, we learned about the priorities, we learned about the green rectangles of money. And there's a bunch of people who believe that that paracosm is the only one. If you want to be more energetic, you just drink coffee. That's what everybody does, rather than sitting and breathing. I have energy. How could you get energy from breathing? That doesn't make sense. So to be able to expand and dilate, to me, it's like we just learned as humanity, we just learned that we can put on like red colored glasses or yellow colored glasses. And there's actually far more octaves or spectrums of awareness that we can extend to that we have yet not. But also, I wonder if yesterday was the beginning of everything, and then if tomorrow is the beginning of everything, and if we're just in the constant firmament, a precipice of a constant form of new experience or expression. Useful?
Interesting.
I feel like my response was very much linear. Are we at the beginning? Yes, there's more. And what I feel from Richie is like this parallel dimensional vertical, like, yes, there is more. I like it. I like it a lot. And I like that word paracosm. If I may go down a rabbit trail, I had this crazy dream the other night where I was dreaming of a place, and it was a very specific location. And in the dream, I realized that I had been there before in other dreams. And then I started remembering all these different dream locations, and I was mapping them out in my head. And it made me think about like Mind Palace and just this definition of Paracosm. But it was incredible because I was able to distinguish in between sleep and dream. I was like in this lucid, half awake state, and I was having memories like, okay, that's a place I've been to in waking life. That's a different place that I've been to in dream life, and they were incredibly distinct, if that makes sense. Anyway,
Yes.
so yeah, that's a whole paracosm. But I started, like, I can remember I could have described in detail 4 or 5 locations that are assembled from definitely different like real world feelings and real world locations, but it's definitely a subconscious mishmash of things, but they exist now, and I could describe them to you, and I can revisit them. So this is like a few nights ago, so I'm excited
Right.
to explore that.
It could be said
paracosm.
that those would be different sort of different wings of heaven or different levels of the beyond, and you've just finally granted access to be like, wow, I can imagine myself into a new part of God's kingdom. Wow, I have access to, level 4 or level 5, when up until previously you thought there was only maybe 2 tiers in some ways. And the state, that half awake, half asleep state, is sometimes called the hypnagogic state.
Yeah.
Ooh.
You can get there in deep prayer or meditation, or just like if you're flirting with sleep just before you dream, you can like hang out there and like set up a little table and have drinks with your friends or something.
Say that word one more time.
I am well acquainted with that state.
Nice. The hypnagogic, Hypnogogac. In some Eastern cultures, specifically around India, like 2 a.m., you go have tea with your neighbors, because everybody would go to sleep and get REM sleep, and then wake up kind of in a half-day stupor, and then like have tea and Rubio's tea, non-caffeinated tea with your neighbors and talk, because yesterday was over, but tomorrow hasn't started yet.
That's amazing.
I would have a difficult time because whenever I'm coming out of that out of sleep period, my body does not want to get up.
I'm mine either. Yeah, I'm the same.
But
Yeah.
I have definitely heard of the paracosms just phrased differently. Because I
How
know
so?
because I know that whenever we are born, we are giving a name. And because the culture that we live in, and probably even even further back to ancient times, that's basically how we know. We assign a name because how else will we be able to call each other, get other people's attention? We got to get each other's attention. So, but the whole, I guess the rest of it comes with an identity, and then of course the world kind of encapsulates that. But so that's interesting when it comes to that, because most of us go throughout that life only knowing that bubble, if you want to use that word. But what Richie and the definition that we got, and even the stuff I've that agrees with that I've come across here recently, basically it says, hey, let's burst the bubble and get out of the bubble. Question is, are you able to, or are you willing to? Because I think that also has to do with a little bit of the Matrix thing, right?
Yeah, there's probably multiple bubbles.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I think that might be a good idea to talk about, like, why it's useful to have a circle of people, or why it's
Yeah.
good not to try to do something like that all by yourself. And not necessarily with like a lineage or a tradition where there's like a superior and then you're inferior to them, like a guru complex. That's not always healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's something to be said that, like, King Arthur had his round table and you had people around you and you cared about their opinion. If
Yeah.
they said, no, stop, you're like, really? Okay, well, I'm listening to you, rather than, no, stop. Yeah, what the f- do you know? You don't know anything. Oh, I know the best. Blah, ha, ha, ha. I was
Mhm.
chosen by the giant owl.
Straight a giant owl.
Well, I mean, camaraderie in that way, like a
Yeah.
circle.
Yeah.
Besides just the geometric shape, we could go sacred geometry for days, I'm sure. But like having a circle, like what is it? A clique? No. Enclave? No, there's a word for a circle of people. The
I would
importance
just
of
call it the circle, just because you
Sure.
know that's your trusted
Yeah.
few.
cadre. That's the word I was looking for. Why would you want a circle? What would be the point of having a circle?
Gosh, the circle itself is I mean, we could get deep on that.
I'm okay with that.
I mean, there's you guys might be more in tune with esoteric on that. I'm just kind of surface level on it, but
Like
the
my
circle the circle cannot be unbroken, they say, if it's you know.
true. Yeah, that's one.
There's a whole
That's one
song.
way of looking at it. Like my perspective is the service level, but it's that kind of goes in multiple different areas, from the wedding ring type thing to like your circle of friends of who you most trust.
Mhm.
But then, like, you know, with Jesus and the disciples, you know, it was broken because that one person, but then they replaced it. So it's supposed to be that unbroken thing where you have the people that you trust that will never betray you. Rich, you that's the thing for pi, right?
Yeah, 3.14 would be the circle for pi. And there's also like the circle of life. Like there's all these circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have that circle of community, especially if we're talking about mysticism and
Mhm.
exploring deep things. Like, I find it incredibly valuable to have others who know me and see my heart and can reflect back to me, maybe if I'm not, my actions aren't seeming to be in alignment with what they know to be my heart for things. That's incredibly valuable. I think humans are made to need that.
The flower life is just a bunch of circles interwoven together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are
Yeah.
those circles acting as authenticity checks for the other circles?
Whoa, bro, you're not so round right now.
Sorry, I'm kind of overly today. I'll work on that. Being very,
So
very
much
ellipsis.
So much
Don't be
grace for your
square, bro.
ovaliness.
I feel so Pentagon right now.
I self-identify as a triangle. Thank
Oh
you.
god, here we go.
That's right.
The one thing I do love about, and you know, I know almost next to nothing when it comes to the flower of life, but you know, you got the circle that connects with all the other circles that just keeps on connecting, but at the same time, that's another way of showing that everything's connected. You know, our circles, which is basically our life, and we're going about our life, but then we connect with other people. So it kind of also makes you wonder, like, since you know how we said earlier that the circles aren't meant to be broken, but what about whenever you separate one circle from the other, that, you know, you're removing one person from another person, and that's, in my opinion, it's kind of one of the reasons why it hurts whenever someone, especially when someone that we've grown very fond of, it hurts whenever that person leaves,
Mhm.
because it's not meant to be broken, maybe.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, I wonder
Um,
if that spiral plays into it. because the circle would be an infinite click that goes around and around, but if there's something pops from it, then it can spiral to the inside, and whatever spirals in must spiral out. So then we got the conch shell, and you got the maybe you had to let go of that person in your circle so your circle could become more circular to get the other person who is of a correct circle, instead of that weird ellipsoidal ovally person.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
pruning the tree to get its best fruits.
Maybe the overarching creator as an engineer.
Yes.
Maybe
an
we are on
architect.
2D. We are on 2D and we cannot see from 3D, or we are on 3D and we cannot observe 4D.
Yeah.
Have you seen that animation of the solar system? I love that, where, you know, I used to think it was a bunch of circles, but really it's a bunch of spirals. Like, a circle becomes a spiral if it's moving in a direction.
Yeah.
Interesting. And of course, whenever you always want to go spiraling upwards, but at the same time, like the way I always think, you know, I am always seeing things in a symbolic form. Do you really want to be spiraling? Because if I see a spiral or like a spiral staircase in a vision or dream, a spiral means you're out of control, and you don't want to be out of control. Even if you're going up, you know, you're still feeling like you're going to be out of control going up, even if you're gaining. But it's better than going down, which means, you know, you're going down life, and it's not good, especially if you're in the spiral.
It's funny you mentioned that. I had a cousin that had a spiral staircase in his house, and I went up and down that thing hundreds, probably thousands of times in my life, and I don't think I ever fully got used to it. It always felt disorienting going down it and going back up it. It always feels weird. It's hard to explain. So maybe there's something to that. It can be disorienting.
Weird. Yeah, I know that, like, this was probably about a month-ish ago or so. I don't remember how far back, but basically I had a dream that I was going up this spiral staircase, but mind you, over the last, I want to say 4 or 5 years, I've had several dreams of me trying to go up a spiral staircase, but because it was getting so high, I can never go up. And because I have a very bad literal fear of heights, where I have a hard time getting past a certain amount of stairs on a literal ladder. So, you know, going up a staircase in a dream, and if it gets, you know, they always got narrower. But like the one a couple months ago, I tried to go up it. I was like, nope, can't do this. And finally, I just said, screw it, I'm gonna do it. But I kept my gaze down on the foundation, which of course is Christ, and I finally got past that fear and went up the two levels. But again, it's, you know, it was a spiral one. So from what I've always been able to understand, I knew that there was a possibility of me feeling like I was going to be out of control as I went up there. That actually reminds me, during all of y'all's walk, your increase in your spirituality, your walk with Christ, whatever you want to call it, how has it looked like for y'all when it comes to, it's just been a straight staircase? Has it been a spiral thing, or have you, it's been really stuttered? Obviously you don't have to use the same symbolism, but just gonna give an idea.
Yeah, I'll give someone else the floor first.
Cyan? Start with you this time.
I'm just still a little bit pondering the spiral staircase.
Well, again, it
metaphor,
doesn't have to use the same, just
yeah,
like how
no,
has
but
your
it's
walk
good.
been? What has it looked like?
Yeah, well, I'll draw a line even if there's not one. Yeah, just like that fear of escalation, of getting higher and higher, has been a part of my journey for sure. Of like, the uncomfortableness of the great mystery, and I think that ties into mysticism again, you know. And yeah, stepping into the void where you don't know what's gonna happen, stepping out in faith when you don't know if it's real. I kind of like, to be honest, in real material world, I sort of get off on that sort of thing. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker, so that probably has some parallels to my spiritual journey. Like, I want more, I want it all. Like, it's crazy, it's weird, it's scary. At least I have a desire to not let the fear of the mystery.
You've embraced
me.
it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been seasons when I'm like, I know you're there, higher dimension, but that's a little bit not ready for that. But then, eventually, the curiosity and the hunger builds once again, and yeah. So I'd like it to be a continual spiraling upward. If I were to talk about my spiritual journey, and it's had ups and downs, and a lot of coming back full circle for sure.
I personally would rather not the spiral, but I've kind of learned, and I don't know about y'all, that it just happens with me. I think it also kind of keeps me on. This may be a bad way of saying it, but I think you'll understand. It keeps me unbalanced. That way I don't fall back into the religious thing. But it keeps me focused on him and not on me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, all of our paths are unique. So what may be kind of be put into place for you or for me or for someone else,
Exactly.
It's not all going to, all our experiences are going to be unique.
Mm-hmm.
And so what works for you may not work for anybody else, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. I think my quest has been like a perforated line. It's like, yep, do this higher dimensional. Nope, don't do that lower dimensional. Yep, do that higher dimensional. Nope, don't do that lower dimensional. And a lot of times I'm like, yeah, but I really want, oh yeah, I shouldn't just sit around and watch cartoons all day. That's lesser dimensional awareness is like, do this, do the thing. And I'm like, but Invader Zim is so cool. And Midnight Gospel
Right,
is
though?
so... Wait. Do I need to sit in meditation and in lotus posture all day long? Or can I like go outside and like interact with humans? Yeah, I can do that. So I'd say there's some of it to kind of keep me from falling back into old program routines that I found.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also enough of a newity, unmeasurableness that it encourages me to stay on the ball and keep the main thing.
Well, as a longtime Invader Zim fan, I want to sincerely say that I really resonate with your journey.
The tallest. Very good. Food court here.
I was never able to get into that cartoon.
I think that's something that really kind of drew my mind open, was to realize that some mystics work through word and story, some mystics work through visual art, some mystics work through music, and then some mystics like don't have a medium. Just as beings, they just like have this je ne sais quoi, this air, this aura of just like, I'm a magical, look at me go, like, wow.
Interesting. But that does kind of remove the status quo of things. By everyone needing their own way of doing something, it removes that. By someone just being, and it makes me wonder if those are the people who, because I know as human beings we all look at other people like, man, I wish I had that, but then we realize that, well, actually we don't always realize it, but we see other people and like, man, I wish I had that, without even realizing what we actually do have and the power that we have in our own selves, because we don't even know how to use it.
Yep.
That's good. I had someone tell me some words that really stuck in my exploration of what does it mean to to have spiritual sight or see in the spirit, or what is a seer. And I told him, I really wish I could see like you see, because his experiences were really incredible. And he told me, no, you see like you see. And that was a huge shift for me. Instead of looking once again to the out there somewhere, I started to ponder and recognize the ways that I was already seeing, which is definitely not always a visual picture thing. It's a feeling, it's a knowing. For me, it's definitely weighted towards the visual side of things. But that was huge. And then I was like, oh wait, like I've been seeing this whole time, but I thought it was supposed to look like that other person's journey, or I thought it was supposed to look like this thing that I read. So like embracing that unique perception was really powerful for me.
I think you bring up a great point of a lot of us do at first look out there. The answers are more about going inward, and then if there's an answer out there, it'll be brought to you, sort of thing.
I like that.
I think some of the most mystical people I encountered wouldn't call themselves mystical. I think it was that I made myself ready to see with mystical eyes. And then every mundane thing all of a sudden had an additional level of majesty to it.
I was watching a video about mysticism and what is it, and
you're doing homework on these questions, man.
I searched it on YouTube a few hours ago. Yeah.
All right. Share it. What came up?
But it was cool. He was like mysticism is. It seemed like he was responding to the feeling that being labeled as a mystic was a negative thing. But he was saying, it's horrible paraphrasing, I'm sure, but mysticism, it's the mistake. It comes about because of a mistake to not see reality for all that it is. And when you view someone as a mystic, to them, they are not a mystic, they're just looking at reality. But it's connected to knowledge and awareness. If you yourself don't have that knowledge or awareness, then to you, that person, it looks like they're a mystic. But he was tying it into like, it's just seeing life for what it is in all that depth and all of that multi-level dimensions. And it only appears to be someone who's seeing the unseen or experiencing the unseen, because you yourself, that's not part of your reality necessarily. So I'm probably butchering the thought, but maybe you understand.
It's a pretty awesome butchered thought. Reminds me of the idea of mythic versus mystic. And if somebody has mythic powers, they might just know that you're supposed to like rattle the machine back and forth before you put in the quarter. That's it. It's not that they like actually have an ancient connection with the power of Gatorade. It's just they have awareness of like a consciousness that says if you rattle the machine and then you put in the coin, it works. Or if somebody's trying to sit down with incense and like look in the smoke for answers, and they just sit down and burn some resin and like, oh, I see nothing. Versus somebody who says, okay, I'm making myself available for this perception, and I'm doing this so that I can see. And now I'm opening myself up so that it may be brought to me this kind of answer, and those senses can kind of turn on.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah. What was that again that you were saying about the mistake? Because that resonated with me, because it seems like my journey is make every mistake. Let me rephrase that. You're so hard-headed that the only way you seem to learn is if you screw it up first and then learn from your mistake. It's happened to me. That seems to be my modus operandi. Screw it up first and learn from it.
Oh my gosh.
Dang, I wonder if you're learning for all your circles. If in some way, like you're the lead point, so as you learn lessons, it proliferates through all of your connections and the people around you. Like, wow, I cannot love as deeply as I want to because maybe this or this, or no, I need to love deeper because if I only love on the surface level, this or this, or I have to really value these things.
It makes me very empathetic and sympathetic to people that have issues going on. Almost, I've had people argue with me over being, sometimes too compassionate. They're like, this person is a screw up. They've screwed over everybody. They don't deserve another chance. And to me, it's like, well, they're still a person. If they're still breathing, there's still a chance. And I don't know, some people, and for good reasons, a lot of times they cut people off because they've screwed up too much, and it's like, I can't deal with that drama anymore. But I always try as much as I can to be sympathetic, empathetic, because I've been down in it.
I think failure speaks of, like, it means you're trying. If you're not failing, you're not even trying. So
That's a great point.
Yeah.
What's the phrase? Fail forward, fail often.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how does that cross over, Chris, with your spiritual experience? Do you find yourself kind of having that same attitude towards trying, seeking new things or whatever?
Oh yeah, because there's just been some times where I thought there was no hope. The situation was going to land me. My path was either jail, death, this, and I was like, there's no hope. There's no hope. And then literal miracles would happen that would pull me out of situations and end one thing and move me to another thing. Stuff that I did nothing to do. It just dominoes would fall certain ways, certain parts would move around. And I think that's just God's way of helping me with my faith. Like, I helped you here. Obviously, you didn't do that to help yourself. So I think those things I think they've been helpful overall, because I've seen how God can move during times where you think you don't deserve it. You don't think you can ask for help, or you don't think that God's happy with you. And that's not true. God's grace is limitless. Your second chances are limitless if you're willing to keep moving forward and trying to work it out. When you give up, that's when you lose.
Okay, I think this is actually a good time to call the first hour. So for those who are watching and you want to basically watch this continued discussion, head over to the Mystic Circle I think it's .com, right? .net, and join that, and you'll be able to watch the second half of this. And we have another hour discussion behind this, so I hope everyone enjoyed it, and be sure to check it out.
Absolutely.
See y'all in a few.
Hour 2 is for initiates. Unlock premium content at www.themysticcircle.net.